Guess what? Nowadays, we want this thing called intimacy. Back in your parents' and grandparents' days, a companionable marriage, side by side, raising the kids, paying the mortgage, good enough. But we, for the first time in history, and I want you to get what an incredible historic moment this is, we want intimate marriages. We want to be emotionally, sexually, physically, spiritually connected to each other in ways that our grandparents would have, what? But that's what we want. But we live in an anti-relational, patriarchal culture, an individualistic culture. And we don't teach our sons and daughters and non-binary kids the basic skills to pull off this new ambition. Everyone who sees you in your office does not have the basic relational skills that will deliver on their ambition to be really close to each other in a sustained way. We don't know how to do it. And then we blame each other and we get frustrated and all sorts of crap goes on, but we don't do very well. RLT, relational life training, which breaks down to relational life therapy for us therapists, relational life training for coaches, we train coaches as well as therapists, was born out of 2 days like this one. Back in 1994, I wrote a book called I Don't Want to Talk About It. How many of you know that book? That's very gratifying. I wrote I Don't Want to Talk About It, which was the first book ever written about male depression. Before that book, depression was seen as a largely woman's disease, 3 times more women than men, in much the same way that alcoholism had been seen as a male disease, and I broke that up. As you know from the book, I said that men experience and express depression differently than women do, and now that's commonly held in the field. If you Google male depression, and you get WebMD or NIMH or the Mayo Clinic, they all start off saying what I said back in the 90s. You don't see male depression, you see the acting out or self-medication that the man does to escape the depression. So in brief, male depression goes like this. There's acting out or addiction, self-medication. Underneath that is the same depression that women feel, overt depression. Underneath that is trauma. And I speak about what I call the normal traumatization of boys under patriarchy. I've been writing about and against patriarchy for 40 years. I talk about political patriarchy, which is the oppression of women by men, which is obviously quite serious. But as a psychotherapist, my main concern are the dynamics of what I call psychological patriarchy. And in brief, psychological patriarchy has 3 concentric rings. The first I call the Great Divide, which means you take all the qualities of one whole human being, you draw a line down the center, you say these qualities are masculine, these are feminine, and everybody knows who goes where, right? The second concentric ring I call the dance of contempt, which is that the so-called masculine values are exalted, the feminine values are devalued. Masculine identity is a negative identity. What it means to be a man traditionally is to not be a woman, not be weak, not be girly, which is torturous. But this is ugly stuff. The essential relationship between the masculine and the feminine is contempt. The masculine holds the feminine in contempt, outside and inside. The essence of traditional masculinity is invulnerability. The more invulnerable you are, the more manly you are, the more vulnerable you are, the more girly you are, and girly is not a good thing. So RLT offers a new map, how to live relationally, and a toolbox, how to actually operationalize it. A new map and a set of what we call relational technology. This is how you speak up. This is how you listen. This is how you deal with an unhappy partner. This is how you cherish. This is what you do when you're being reactive. Basic skill. Okay. Anyway, after I wrote that book, I started getting calls from all over the world. Is there someone in London or Topeka or what? And I would look up trained family therapists, and After about 2 years, I said, if you're desperate enough and you have the resources, come to Boston where I was practicing, and I'll do what I can. And I would sit with a couple, still do this. I would sit with a couple for 2 days, from 10 in the morning till 5:30 at night. At the end of our second day, our deal was you're either back on track or getting a divorce. This was the last stop. It was a self-selecting population who would come and schlep to Boston and pay me a second mortgage and do all that, but they did. And I noticed two things as I started doing these interventions. One, it was very successful. I don't claim to have fixed all of these couples. Everybody went back with a treatment plan. You go to AA, you get a medication evaluation, you do a women's group. And informally, those who maintained the recommendations were good. Those who didn't follow through on the recommendations were most often good for a few months to about a year, and then they reverted back again. But they were almost all saved. They were pulled from the brink of divorce. So the first thing I noticed is this shit works. By the way, this is how I talk. If there's anybody who's offended by my vulgarity, let me know and I'll clean it up. But as I say to my patients, if you don't mind, I like to talk the way you do. And then an extraordinary gift, a woman, how many of you know the work of Carol Gilligan? Carol Gilligan, legendary feminist psychologist. Carol wrote a beautiful review at the New York Times for my book, I Don't Want to Talk About It. And she lived in Cambridge, and so I said, let's go out to lunch, and we immediately fell in love and started working together. We did a thing over 5 years, just a few times a year. I would meet with a couple on the brink of divorce in front of the one-way mirror and work with them for 2.5, 3 hours. And Carol assembled an extraordinary team behind the one-way mirror of sociologists, anthropologists, therapists of every stripe you can imagine, analysts, cognitive behavioral, you name it. They would watch my work for 2.5 years and discuss back there. Then the couple would leave, Carol and the group would come in front with me, and we would spend another 2.5, 3 hours, and each from their own perspective would tell me what they just saw me do, and we talked about it. Out of those discussions, a new school of working relationally was born. I call it relational life therapy, because the curative factor is leading people into the jet stream of a relational life on this planet. I believe we are born to be relational. I believe it is what our bodies as well as our psyches are designed for. You know, there's all sorts of beautiful research now about the physical effects. Not being in a state of rich intimacy is as bad for you physically as smoking a pack and a half of cigarettes a day. Think about that. Loneliness does to the body what a pack and a half of cigarettes a day does. And conversely, rich social connection will buffet you from all sorts of trauma that would overwhelm you if you were alone. We were born to be relational. My friend and colleague, the great Dan Siegel, helped me learn that our brains are relational. Dan calls parents the neuroarchitects of their children. We build our children's brains. We therapists lend our brains to our clients. And our neurologies are not freestanding. I like to say, if you really want to look at a freestanding individual, talk to someone who's been in solitary confinement. They go crazy. The idea of self-regulation is nonsense. We co-regulate all day long. That's how the human species is designed. Intimacy, rich social connection, being in an authentic state of connection to ourselves, start there. Trauma dissociates us. Ourselves, what we're feeling, what our sensations are, what we want, what our emotions are, what we're thinking. Healthy self-esteem, which is that I'm neither better nor worse than anybody else in the world. This is so we restore your relationship to yourself, and we restore your relationship to others, those you love, those who are like you in your community, and beyond that, those who are unlike you from different communities, different backgrounds, different colors, different cultures. And then beyond that, to nature itself. And for those for whom this speaks, to spirit. Being in an authentic connected state to ourselves, our bodies, to those we love, to those like us, to those unlike us, to the planet Earth and beyond. This is what we're designed for. This is the pearl of great price. This is what makes us happy. Nothing else will do. RLT is known for producing transformative change, both in each of the individuals and in the relationship very quickly. And we do. How do we do that? By moving somebody into the jet stream of relationality. Once they're moved from disconnection into connection, the state of connectedness is so much more pleasurable, so healthy, so enlivening and nurturing that it just takes them. I don't move them, relationality moves them, because it's what we're born for. So that's what we do.